Hello, and welcome to the Week 11 edition of the Survivor Video Podcast. It is Matt Brown. It is Steven Andrus. And again, as always, each and every week, congrats if you are watching this. It means you are still involved in at least some sort of Survivor pool out there. So good on you, Steven. We lose some more people this week, of course, with the Eagles going down. Fortunately, you and I, just for a future value standpoint, had told people to stay away from the Eagles. We thought it was better to use them in the future. That being said, if you played them, hey, I can't blame you, especially if you're in a shallower pool. That just kind of sucks. But as we move forward this week, as we are looking at these lines, not a ton of big favorites this week. You do have the Bills as 8.5 point favorites over the Cleveland Browns. You have the Eagles as 6.5 point road favorites over, break up the Colts. Maybe it's the new version of the Colts here. We'll get down a little bit further. Of course, the Ravens are the chalk this week, 12-point favorites over the Carolina Panthers. You go down, if you want to play the Chiefs, you have them as 6.5 point favorites over the Chargers, and then the 49ers are 8-point favorites over the Arizona Cardinals on a Monday night in Mexico City. So just remember, there is some additional factors going into that one. It would just be, both teams are on a road game, but it is taking place in Mexico City. Steven, as we take a look here at the board, what was the first team that really kind of jumped out at you? And again, as always, we'll talk about if you're in a shallower pool, if you're still, a couple hundred people left in yours, whatever, that certainly will change how we look at all this.
I think the Baltimore Ravens are the obvious chalk here this week against the Carolina Panthers. And if I'm looking at least, now we both look at different sites here, but so you can tell me what you see on your end, but at least in terms of the ESPN Eliminator remaining contestants, the Ravens are not the most popular choice this week. They're actually the second most popular choice for whatever reason at this moment, behind the Patriots against the Jets, which doesn't make any sense to me, but it's just a matter of who's left for people to choose in your particular pools. So Ravens as the not most popular choice right now in a nationwide pool is interesting to me. This is still PJ Walker at quarterback. They played a division rival for the second time to pull that upset against the Falcons in the rain against an Atlanta team who just is really only has one gear, right? Like, they run the ball, they play really slow, and if that doesn't work out, they're going to lose the game. Baltimore is a very well-coached team on both sides of the ball. We both have them as close to a top 5 team in our power rankings. If not, they're in that same tier below the top tier of teams. So I think that's probably the safest choice for me this week.
Yeah, I think that the Ravens are likely the only choice if you are in a shallower pool, for sure, because you're not going to feel incredible about putting them in your lineup again. I mean, look, they're going to be favorites in most of these games moving forward, but again, on the road at Jacksonville next week, would we be blown away if they lost, if they threw a stinker in there? Would that Denver defense, not that the Denver offense has shown a pulse at all, but in week 13, that Denver defense, if they just were able to shut down Baltimore and then Denver won a very ugly 13-10 game or something like that, would that completely shock us? So, I mean, again, it's then it's on the road at Pittsburgh. And again, they're going to be favorites, and it's still Pittsburgh, but it is on the road. I think here in this game, coming out of a bye against Carolina, now, Carolina, at least in my opinion, is minimally more live now that Baker Mayfield is going to be starting for them as opposed to PJ Walker. So I think that is at least a tiny tick in the right direction for them. But I think it's Baltimore number one with a bullet for me this week. Honestly, Steven, I not even really close. I think it's them way above and beyond everybody else. And again, if you're watching this and you happen to still be one of the handful of people in Circa, you can't use Buffalo. You got to save Buffalo for Thanksgiving week. And so them against Cleveland, even as big favorites here, you can't play them this week. So really, Steven, we get into that next tier. So let's say someone has already burned Baltimore this week, right? So they've already burned Baltimore this week. Now we get to San Francisco, Kansas City, Philadelphia. You look at those again, these are like 8-point to touchdown-ish spreads for all of these teams. Kansas City's on the road, Philadelphia's on the road, and San Francisco's in a neutral site. So none of these are home games for these next biggest favorite teams. Of that next tier, unless again, we're gonna move Buffalo out of the conversation, then we'll move Buffalo back in the conversation. But if we're talking San Francisco, Kansas City, and Philadelphia, who are you looking at as far as who you would be most likely to play?
Matt, I'm going to answer your question kind of working backwards here with how I just want to eliminate some teams before I get to the top here. That's kind of my thought process. And I want to first eliminate the Chiefs because it's a road divisional matchup. And we've seen at various times in our years betting on the NFL, you're playing a familiar foe. The Chargers are getting healthier. It's at least in terms of the context of Survivor, I think the Chiefs could be vulnerable there.
You get and they get the Rams next week at home.
Yeah, there you go. Even better spot as well. The other side of things here is another division opponent for the San Francisco 49ers, and it is the Arizona Cardinals, albeit on a neutral turf in Mexico City. But I love the 49ers long term here. I think they have a shot to go back to the Super Bowl, but the style in which they play with Jimmy Garoppolo means that they have longer drives, less explosive plays, and if they bog down in the red zone like they did against the Chargers last week, it creates more variance and allows an underdog to maybe stay in a game. And I'm not sure I care if Colt McCoy starts in that game because he's shown this year and last year that he's a solid backup as well. So I would eliminate the 49ers out of this next group. I think I'm going to eliminate the Eagles this week too against the Indianapolis Colts because we have to at least admit that with Matt Ryan at quarterback, this is a much better offense than it would be with Sam Ehlinger at this point. They're not playing the Las Vegas Raiders again this week, but I think with the way Cleveland's defense continues to be terrible against every opponent they have, not named Cincinnati and the Bengals' bad offensive line, I think I'd go right back to the well with the Buffalo Bills out of this group of 4 teams.
Yeah. So, okay. So if you're playing in a group that doesn't include Thanksgiving as its own week, then yeah, I mean, I think Buffalo's the play, but let's assume that you're playing in a group where that is, the case, and you need to say Buffalo because it's the only good play on Thanksgiving Day. Of San Francisco, Kansas City, and Philadelphia. And I mean, look, I guess we could throw the Bengals in there, right? I mean, they're only 4.5, 5-point favorites over Pittsburgh, but as far as market odds go and things like that, they're about a 66% chance or whatever to win the game. So
I would definitely not pick Cincinnati. They get TJ Watt back for Pittsburgh. The defense, I think, is still, that front seven has plenty of talent to wreck the Bengals' struggling offensive line. That's got red flags all over it for me. So if I'm taking them out and the Bills out, I would probably still go Eagles here against the Colts and Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
That's a big jump up to go from beating the Raiders to now beating the Eagles in a home game, albeit in Indianapolis. But if you're making me take the Bills out of the mix here, I think I would go Eagles.
Yeah. So that being said, there's only a handful of people left in those type of contests. So for me, Ravens easily number 1, not even a question. Like, you want to use them because you're not going to feel great about smashing the button on them over the next few weeks. Number 2, I think would be Buffalo again, unless you're in Circa, in which case you're going to need to hold on to them or whatever. If you're in a contest that counts Thanksgiving as its own week, Buffalo easily number 2 for me. And same deal with me. I think 3 would still be Philadelphia. I mean, I think this is a pretty good buy low spot on them. If they would have won on Monday night, this would be on the other side of 7. If they would have blown out the Commanders, we'd be looking at 8.5 on this thing. So it would be right there with San Francisco and all that. And listen, the reason I'm a little hesitant about San Francisco, and I mean, look, my latest power rankings, I've got them 4th overall. That being said, neutral site game, Mexico City, so there's the whole altitude thing that's going on and all the stuff like that and whatever. Like, it's just weird type deals, getting out of the travel regimen where you're going to a different country, so things are just different than it is. It's to me, I just feel like there is going to be better spots for San Francisco moving forward to use them. I mean, listen, they get New Orleans in week 12. Saints look like they're punting on the season completely. They get Washington in week 16. They get the Raiders in week 17. So, I mean, there are other spots to use San Francisco. Now, that being said, if you've already used Baltimore, Buffalo, and Philly, I'm still using San Fran over Kansas City as a road divisional game. Like I would still be using San Francisco in this neutral site over Kansas City. And like we mentioned, the Kansas City Chiefs get the Rams next week, who have obviously punted on this season. So for me, Baltimore, Buffalo, Philly, San Francisco, Kansas City. And if you don't, and again, if you've already used the teams, you just kind of start taking off down the list, in my opinion.
For sure. And if for whatever reason you have used all of those teams that Matt just mentioned, I think there are a couple of decent contrarian plays this week with the Giants and the Commanders. And I think I would go with the Commanders over the Giants at Houston this week. Matt, we kind of talked about it when they made the quarterback switch. Carson Wentz got hurt to Taylor Heineke, and we thought that was at worst a slight upgrade from
You're talking
Carson
about the Texans,
Wentz.
Not the Giants. Texans.
I'm sorry. Yeah. The Commanders at the Texans, Giants at home against Detroit. So Washington at Houston, I think is fine if you're in a pinch here in Survivor. And they've played really well with Taylor Heineke. I think he is an upgrade from what Carson Wentz can do. He at least can scramble and buy time, as we saw against Philadelphia. So, and Houston's like drawing dead here, man. They have Dameon Pierce, and that's about it, because Davis Mills can't get the ball to a couple of decent receivers.
I think for me, if I had used all of those, I would probably be looking at the Patriots against the Jets. Like it is a home game against Zach Wilson, and yes, that defense has played much better for the Jets, and that's something to be a little bit worried about. But I would feel better about the Patriots at home against this Jets team that I think is just completely out kicking their coverage or whatever. In all of that. So, I mean, it's kind of dire straits when it comes down to that. I would not play the Saints against the Rams. I don't care if the Saints are 3.5 point favorites in that game. The Saints they don't even know who they're going to start at quarterback yet. I mean, I
don't know how that line could be 3.5 when we don't even know who's starting at quarterback.
Yeah.
For the
So,
Saints.
I mean, Saints are not even an option for me at all. I'm probably a little bit more in on Cincinnati and the Bengals than you are. I think it's probably a pretty solid win for them. I do understand TJ Watt is back, and getting a pass rusher of his caliber is massive, but I'm probably a little bit higher on Cincinnati than you are, but I think I would still play the Patriots over Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati is still on the road at Pittsburgh, where it's New England is at home against the Jets, who, again, still have Zach Wilson at quarterback. He's not any good. So that would be my desperation if I didn't have any of those teams that we just mentioned.
I think you and I are agreed on Cincinnati's ceiling. And I think you and I would probably agree that the Ravens' odds to win that division are crazy short right now and probably aren't accurate. But I think where we disagree on the Bengals is their floor in any given week. And it's because for me, their offensive line. I just think the range of outcomes in any given week with the Bengals is so wide that in a survivor style situation, it just makes me really nervous, especially with that offensive line.
Look, I think you'd be in a pretty bad spot if you didn't have any of those teams that we were talking about. So I don't think you need to play them this week, to be perfectly honest. I mean, again, for me, Ravens number 1 with a bullet, Buffalo number 2 if you're not in a contest where you have to hold on to them. I think Philly, again, number 3 for me. I think it's a pretty good buy low spot here. The fact that it's only 6.5, like I said, we would definitely be on the other side of 7 if they'd have won on Monday night. And certainly if they'd have blown them out, we'd be looking at 8.5. So pretty good spot there for Philadelphia to get back in on them, buy low. And like I said, San Francisco, the one I'd be avoiding would be the Chiefs, just on the road. I still think they win the game, but Steven, we know like things can get dicey, and apparently the Chargers are trying to get both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams back out there this week and all that. So just a little bit of a interesting situation there. So let's hold on to the Chiefs. You can play them against the Rams next week, and they're going to smash the Rams.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, we appreciate everybody coming back and listening to our Survivor advice every week, because I'm the dope that told you to take the Raiders against the Colts last week. And if you did that, you got eliminated. So, I mean, in all fairness, I didn't think Matt Ryan was going to start after the owner came in and said that Ellinger, but apparently Jeff Saturday says, I got the job now. You can't stop me from starting whatever quarterback I want. And Matt Ryan's back out there. Yeah. So it's a different team than what we thought going into last week.
It really is. It really is. But guys, look, if you got the Ravens, don't overthink this. You're likely in even if you started in a massive pool, it has been whittled down to almost nothing at this point. So don't overthink it. Ravens certainly this week if you have them. If you don't, like we said, Buffalo, Philadelphia, still very solid plays for you this week as well. Guys, everything we do absolutely free here on the line. So if you want to hit that subscribe button down below, really do appreciate it. Give us a thumbs up on this video. And then also let us know in the comment section, who do you have left? Who are you playing? Is there any other team you want some commentary on? Because we'll read the comments and try to get in there and help you out as well. If you head over to lines.com, upper right-hand corner, Discord button, click on that. Be sure and get in there, because that's a open dialogue you can have. Get in the NFL room, start talking to some people, ask them what they think about certain things. It's going 24/7, so be sure and take advantage of that. If you want to follow Steven at StevenAndress1, you want to follow me at Matt Brown M2. Good luck on your Survivor Week 11 pick.